But when you understand what that's doing, you think it's a boost of energy, but it's going to crash and your insulin spikes in the body. We think, oh, well, if you're having higher levels of glucose, let's just boost our insulin. Well, that's increasing more inflammation. How about instead we regulate our glucose curve instead of increasing our insulin?
When you lose muscle mass, it is one of the most dramatic correlations between how long are we going to live, and it's correlated with being frail. So how many people are in nursing homes? How many people, not one person listening would ever say, I want to be frail. Well, if you don't want to be frail, you got to lift weights and you have to do protein. Those two things. You can't do one without the other.
Hi, Ed. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, at least out here.
Yeah, I was going to say good morning to you, but it's 1:00 where you're at. And so The day's almost wrapped up.
Well, I will be ready about 4:00 to leave. I've been doing this for 45 years and I've gotten to where now I actually leave at 4:00 instead of 6 and 7.
Good for you. I love that. Well, everything that you're doing seems to be the right direction. You're thriving. I mean, from what I can see, things are going well. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today and hearing just a little bit of your insight and wisdom into this conversation. So today we are discussing blood sugar, but specifically the connection with protein and why is protein so important? How much protein do we need? Just this conversation. But before we dive into that, I'd love for the listeners to hear a little bit more about you. So you're the founder of Nutrition World in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is an absolute incredible resource if you are local to the area or even use it as a destination to travel. The services that you guys provide, how did you get into this field and what got you inspired to start Nutrition World?
Well, I truly think I was born to follow this path, the path of realizing that we have a lot more control over our longevity, our quality of life than we are led to believe. And it was true when I was 9 years old and a Shackley salesman came to our house and laid out all these ideas about power of food, power of supplements. And I don't know why my dad scheduled with her, but he did. And I was just spellbound by the fact that we actually have impacts on what we do for our future. Because when you're young, it seems like either something happens and there's no reason for it to happen. Well, there is reasons for poor health. And, as much as we know now, but again, some parts we don't know a lot. We knew nothing back in the 60s. There was not enough science to ever say that what we eat really truly affects our health. But I knew that the supplements seemed to be very positive, and I knew that maybe food was a powerful entity. And so I grew up and worked at GNC for one summer before I went to college, and that really planted the seeds. But I was on a path to be a police officer, which I became for Chattanooga. But within 1 year, my dad was a businessman and he wanted me to follow my heart. So we actually opened a small store while I still worked as a police officer. So I would work one shift as an officer, then work the other hours at the store. I had one employee and did very poorly for about 4 years. But my passion for working out, food, exercise, supplements was hardcore. So we kept plugging along. And all businesses generally have a very rough time for many years. If you're going to be successful, you have to be willing to put in the time and effort and sometimes go through dark times. And we certainly did. But it started to grow and we started to finally make a little bit of money. And then I started reaching out to the idea that we need practitioners to help. You can't just eat your way healthy. You can't just supplement your healthy. You can't just exercise. It's a combination that makes all this happen in the end. And sometimes we need helpers like a massage therapist. I had a cranial therapist. It started with 2 people and we had an acupuncturist. Well, we now have 17 practitioners. We have some affiliates outside the center, but we call it our village. And within that, we do practically everything but surgery. We have pediatrician, we have a medical doc, Pilates, physical therapy, you pretty much name it. But most of these people are aligned with my sole message, which is our body has the ability to rehabilitate itself, be healthy, get well if you're not well on its own, but we have to assist it. We have to give it what it needs and remove what may be harming it. Sometimes that's the emotions. Sometimes it's toxins. Sometimes it's deficiencies. Sometimes it's all the above. So the seeking path, or us helping people along the pattern of how do we dig deep to come up with a plan. And we're very cautious about not treating medical conditions, but we're also very aggressive by the fact that I have 4 health coaches. We are here to help you to figure out who you are, how it works, and how can we make this machine the best that it can be.
As soon as this episode's done, I'm signing up for a plane ticket, heading over there. You just made it sound so inspiring, and you can walk in there and feel the change in your health. And it sounds like your dad was quite an inspiration for this journey. What kind of things have you carried on from wisdom, education, inspiration that he's shared that you've instilled into nutrition world?
Well, he was a great entrepreneur, and he was very poor in his health. He smoked cigarettes. He lived on coffee, and I'd always remember it being even 10 years old. He'd put 4 spoons of sugar in each cup of coffee, and he would drink 3 to 4 cups at morning, at lunch, and supper. He never embraced the healthy lifestyle. But what he did embrace was following your bliss in life. If it's something in your heart, that is so important that you go that path, regardless of the challenges. And secondly, he was a wonderful businessman. I find that a lot of people in this industry are passionate, but they seem to sometimes lack the business skill set that allows them to rise to a level that you can't rise to unless you have kind of that mindset. I don't think we're born to be entrepreneurs. I think we can learn that. And I wasn't born, but being around a person in my life like that, it helps immensely to have a thinking of, how do we execute a plan? How do we get success? What do we do to make this happen? And without a good execution plan, it usually will be very poor. I always tell the story of, there was a group of guys years and years ago who had this idea that they could come up with an app where people could go on the app and they could rent or get a person to drive a car and pick them up, and you would pay. And these guys, it was called Magic Cab. Guess what? Nobody knows about Magic Cab because they did not know how to execute. They were completely worthless. They had the idea of $1 billion idea, and they could not make it happen. This is the idea with a lot of nutrition stores, a lot of even medical people, holistic people. They're so good at what they do, but they don't know how to execute. So I had the blessing of the ability to learn how to execute. So that's one reason we are successful.
Yeah, I love hearing that, because a lot of times it's individuals either just have the passion or they just have the business component, but integrating the two of those together is really that sweet spot. And one thing I want to touch in that you mentioned about control. I am a firm believer of integrative medicine. I've been in the hospital since I was an early age because of things out of my control, tumors, paralyzation, all this kind of stuff. But what I've determined or figured out at an early age is there's so much in our control, and I'm not going to let my diagnosis or anything stop me from achieving the life that I want, to improving my longevity, my health span. And I figured out, early on that diet, lifestyle, mindset can shift that dynamic incredibly. And so there is epigenetics in the study of, there is a genetic factor, but I mean, is it research that's showing nowadays? It's kind of that nature versus nurture. What we put in our body, what we, surround ourselves with, the lifestyle, are we, resiliency, are we pushing ourselves every day? That is almost more of an influentiating factor than the genetics itself. And I think you're clearly proving that with the things that you do. And so there is so much in our control. And what I'd love to transition this to is protein, blood sugar, especially blood sugar. That is when you can figure out that sweet spot, when you understand the importance of regulating your blood sugar, I think everything changes. I'm 10 months postpartum, the fittest, healthiest I have ever been. I eat a generally low carb diet. I work out every day. I mean, a variety of things, and it's around what I'm putting in my body, the lifestyle that I have. And so I'd love to hear, why is blood sugar so important in the body? And then let's connect protein, and how does protein play its role in blood sugar regulation?
What a great question. And, actually over 20 years ago, I wrote on a laptop, way before we had the technology of today, I kept telling my then wife, who I'm now divorced by 11 years, that I know that blood sugar is probably, if we have to put one key into a lock and we want to deal with only one thing, I think regulating it to not normal but optimal levels will decrease most of the issues that we have as we age. Well, now, 25 years later, it's certainly coming to fruition as far as the research. And of course, for people who don't understand, I mean, when we eat foods, the end result eventually is a fuel called glucose. And that glucose is fueling part of this cycle that produces ATP. And that is what makes energy within the cellular system of all living creatures, not just us. We're not living in the age that we actually evolve through, because now we, have stores and too much food, and we have all the choices and the addictions. So back in I call it ancient wisdom. I really value looking at animals in the wild or humans that lived in the wild. And especially like Weston A. Price looked at all those people and took photographs of over 10,000 individuals and children, and found exceedingly healthy places on Earth that they never had a toothbrush, yet they never had decay. They had heart disease way down the road near their death. They had very low levels of cancer, and they were eating a diet that I guarantee you, without doubt, maintained a low blood sugar level as far as fasting. And so anytime you have blood sugar, well, first off, when I do a consultation with someone, I'm very connected with the power of proper blood testing, because I say it all the time. It truly is a crystal ball for not only where you are, but where you are heading. And the traditional medical model is very broken in many ways. And in regard to blood testing, it is also. One is they don't test enough parameters. And secondly, they live on what's called the reference range. That range is so wide that you can be in pretty much horrible health and will be told that you are okay. See you in a year. I started about 25 years ago, truly, really deep diving into this blood testing, and realizing early on that we have very short optimal levels and we have very wide reference. And I tell people, as I did yesterday with 2 consultations, due to your blood work that you had done based on, the information I gave you, that you could get this kind of blood work, I'm going to talk to you about how do we empower your health. So I'm going to say, this is where you are, this is where optimal is, and this is how I think you can get to the optimal level. A rising tide raises all ships, and if you can increase the optimal levels of your blood work, it's going to raise your level of health. I don't care if it's from athletes' feet to a very serious disease, or just lack of energy, lack of sleep, it's going to improve when we can improve all these numbers. Numbers for inflammation, numbers of nutritional deficiencies. But the biggest number, there's 2 actually, there's glucose and there's insulin. These are kissing cousins, there's no doubt. And the evaluation of where is your glucose is probably the most important number we need to have. The question is, most people get this number once a year when they go to do a CBC or CMP at their physician's office, or if they are diabetic, then they would be at home testing. But they've already lost a lot of years if they're type 2, because most physicians will not even start talking about it till you're about 110, and then once you get to 123, then you become legally classified as a diabetic. The problem is you've just wasted about 10 years or more as you slowly went up from optimal of 82. You went to 85, 88, 92, 95. All those years we could have done something about this, but we didn't, because that's not the thinking pattern of healthcare today. So to empower yourself is the key, unless you find a very special integrative or someone who's very wise to help you. Now, there's coaches today that are far better than most physicians. You don't have to go to a medical doc, because with people like you, I mean, you said you have taken the deep dive too, and many times it's based on people's personal journeys of hardships of health. I have been fortunate. I don't know why I was wired this way, because I've been overall a quite healthy person. I did have double hip replacement 8 months ago, and it was fully recovered very quickly based on the supplements I took. But as far as how do we go back and put together a plan? My recommendation today is for a person who, one is we need to be at 82 to 84 fasting. When you wake up most mornings, 82 to 84 is optimal. Then we want to figure out how sensitive is your reaction to foods. They can be protein, fats, or carbs, but carbs are the bigger effect, quicker effect. So we want to analyze fasting of 82 to 84. If it's there, that still doesn't mean you're great, because we want that number after you eat to probably go to about 130, unless you're just having a birthday party and you're eating all kinds of bad stuff. So we go to about 130 to 140. A lot of Americans, first off, living well over the 100 range fasting. Then they get to 180s when they eat any foods. What does that mean? One is it means that you're going to gain weight, probably. We do have skinny people who also have this problem, but generally you're going to, if you have a weight problem, you can't really lose that until we get blood sugar and insulin back under a normal and closer to optimal. And so how do we do this? I really have gotten out of the blood testing with the fingers anymore. I'm hugely connected to the continuous glucose monitors. Those are the monitors you slap on your shoulder, and then it's connected to your phone, and then you'll see the true reaction to what does food actually do to your blood sugar. Had a lady, and she's about 62, amazingly healthy, super fit, like you wouldn't believe, and I got her to get one of those, even though I knew her sugars were phenomenal because she does everything right. But she came in about 2 weeks later and said, look at my numbers. And it was perfect. She was fasting at 80 in the morning. She'd get to about 110 to 120 after meals, except every few days she would go to about 180. Found out that watermelon was the one food that was her trigger food. And so that's okay every now and then, but most people would have 10 trigger foods. She only found one. So it could be black-eyed peas for a person if they eat a little more than normal. So these continuous glucose monitors are life-saving to create not only lifespan, but health span. I'm so about what quality of life are we going to have. I don't expect to live to be 92 like Jack LaLanne did. I don't have a need at this point. What I want is to feel my best, not every day. This body has almost 67 years on it, a lot of mileage. And there's days I don't feel as well as others, but even young people say that. But generally, I'm at the gym. I get up at 3:12 every morning. I'm at the gym at 4:30, 5 days a week. I never miss a day with my hips. I missed 14 days after hip replacement. And I've been doing the gym for 50 years. So exercise is vital. And we'll talk about that, maybe about the blood sugar connection. But as far as you want to set up a plan for longevity, it has to involve blood sugar and not guessing. So if you want to do an at-home test kit, order it from Amazon, you can. At least get fasting down to 82 to 84. If you do, you're going to be way ahead of the curve. And then if you have the money, then do the continuous glucose monitor. You don't have to go to your doctor to do it. Online, you can get a 10-minute little consultation. They'll ship you the little kit. You put it on, you look at your phone, and then you figure out what plan really works for me. Because, I'm a person like you. I actually eat 60 carbs Monday through Friday. Then I eat 200 on Saturday, Sunday. I have learned that cyclical diet is far better than staying on the same carb routine all the time, because your body gets immune to whatever it does. And when I do the cyclical diet, I actually feel better. I gain more muscle. I burn more body fat, because it goes back to these receptor sites. That receptor sites are locking key mechanisms. And if you stay on the same thing, whether it's nutrients, diets, or whatever, it tends to lessen the sensitivity of those receptor sites. So that's why I do cyclical diets like that. And when I do that, the pieces fall in place. I did not get under 10% body fat until I was after 60 years old. Why? Because I didn't cycle. I was thinking health. If it's a healthy, nutritious food, I should be able to eat all I want. So if it's whole wheat bread, the more the better. If it's cereal, that's whole grain, no, because I have learned that, and I've done a lot of YouTubes on this through nutritionw.com on putting together macros. The macros are more important to me than the cleanliness of the food. And Dr. Peter Attia said something about a year ago, and I listened to his ebook Outlive, which I think is the greatest book when you combine medicine and nutrition and lifestyle. But he said, and it was really, I knew this, but I didn't have it in words. The power of healthy food is modest. the power of bad food is so destructive. It's about 10 times bigger. You can't just eat healthy food and then take care of toxins in your body and the emotions and the lack of sleep. And people think if they eat enough organic blueberries and enough healthy food nutritionally, it's going to counter the cancers and the diseases and all. It helps, but it can't counter it. We have to go back to the one single thing that I've seen in my 50 years, almost 50 years of being in this business. We have to optimize blood chemistry. That is how we set up a success plan for the future, is with that. And we can do this online. You can do blood testing, and it's inexpensive. And you go to your local town, you get it drawn, and then you want the right person to interpret it. So I've talked a lot here without letting you say a word. So I'm going to be
I love it. I'm soaking in everything, Ed. I think you're such an inspiration for anyone at any age. And the beauty is modern medicine right now, because there are some benefits behind it, is many benefits, is the CGMs. And like you said, we get into this field generally because of personal experiences. And I actually had a number of things, but severe hypoglycemia. So I would go into the 40s, which, as you know, most people go into a coma in the 40s. I believe hypoglycemia is considered 70 and below. I would go into the 40s. And so I had, and this was well before CGMs were more readily available. And again, CGMs, continuous glucose monitor. So for those of you listening, most diabetics, you're familiar. They have to prick themselves every day. I remember my grandmother doing that when I was taking care of her. CGMs, you slap it on there. It stays for about 7 days and it continuously reads your glucose levels. They're available now. I know Levels is a company, Dexcom. So I had a friend who was a Dexcom rep. Before you could just get it, you had to be a diabetic in order to have it. I was able to kind of work through the system because I went practically to a deathly low level. And so I wore a CGM for quite some time. And so there was so much, but this was even before I understood regulating blood sugar, because it would alarm me. I would crash at 40 at 3 a.m. and I would be so afraid. And I mean, this was only a few years ago, and I would run and, grab honey or something like this. So I didn't understand, because it was scary. And, I've had, like seizures and paralysis because it was so low. And so all you want to do is get it up. Well, when you understand the foundation and the chemistry behind how blood sugar works, and you understand what glucose and even fructose, I have an episode coming up on the difference between glucose and fructose and glycemic index and everything. But when you understand what that's doing, you think it's a boost of energy, but it's going to crash and your insulin spikes in the body. We think, oh, well, if you're having higher levels of glucose, let's just boost our insulin. Well, that's increasing more inflammation. How about instead we regulate our glucose curve instead of increasing our insulin? So CGMs, if you are listening, I mean, what Ed is saying is absolutely true. Look into getting one of these. It is available. Now, I know Levels is a company that you can utilize. What companies do you recommend for your clients?
Well, the one lately has been, and I'd have to look it up for sure, but it's VERI. I think that's the name of the company.
Okay,
and
I'll look into that.
Very reliable. I will say that back to blood testing, I want to make sure I get this in. I have a podcast called The Holistic Navigator. That podcast is separate from our business. It's really there because my staff about 6 or 7 years ago said, Ed, I want you to put together an encyclopedia of the things that you have learned over your, 4.5 decades, so that other people can, if I crash my plane tomorrow and I'm gone, I've got something left. So there's 104 episodes, but the one on blood chemistry, and if you Google The Holistic Navigator Blood Chemistry on your phone, then you can hit play. It's myself and a physician friend of mine. I'm doing probably 60% of the talking, but we have a great banter of this is what you need to look for to try to learn how and why of the blood sugar. So again, The Holistic Navigator, just Google it with blood chemistry and it will pop up.
Fantastic. Okay. So let's dive in. We've kind of set the foundation for blood sugar. I have a number of episodes where we're diving into the nitty gritty behind that. But one thing that I haven't really done is pressed into why protein is so important and how it influences our insulin levels, our insulin response. What is protein actually doing scientifically in the body, and how is it related to blood sugar?
Well, again, I go back to, I think the biggest key to help people lose weight, feel better, live longer is macros. What are macros? It's the combination of protein, fats, and carbs that we need to think about when we sit down for breakfast, lunch, supper, and snacks. When I sit down or I look at a menu, I'm always looking at how will I arrange these. Not that hard. If you go to nutritionw.com, YouTube's, I do a thing on macros, and I explain if I do this much protein, I actually want about this much fat, but I want about this much carbs. And that's the kind of ratios that I use, because I use a lot of olive oil, I use some coconut oil, I use organic butter, and I choose foods like avocados and things that have higher fat levels. But as far as the protein, and I've had to do a retake on this because probably 35 years of my life, we only know what we know at the moment based on what everyone knows and what science says. And I'm very big into the scientific information, even though half of it is bought and paid for. It means it's not accurate, but the other half isn't. So I always said that we need about a half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. I think it's wrong. I think we need 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. When I went to that level, everything started falling in place for me past 60 years old. I look at my GFR levels, which are the kidney function levels on blood testing. High protein, it's a myth that it causes dysfunction unless you have kidney failure. Then everything causes that kidney to fail more because it's overloaded. So the protein content itself needs to be 1 gram per pound of body weight. And so I weigh 174. I try to shoot for 174. I have to do two protein drinks a day, and I try to then choose my foods to make it happen. The unsweet yogurts, which I do almost every night with some organic blueberries. But then I'll choose beef, which I think is best. Of course, the best beef is the ones that are more humanely raised with the good foods, because when they give them corn and soy, they're going to produce more omega-6 instead of omega-3.
And the antibiotics.
And then the glyphosate and antibiotics go in. I'm not going to live in a cave. I work 6 days a week. I have to eat out. And I rent this body, and someday I'm going to turn it back in. So I've already accepted that fact. Makes life a little bit easier. I still strive to do the best I can. Eat a lot of eggs. But I truly know, just even from the old-fashioned blood sugar testing, that when you eat carbs alone, you're going to have a far greater increase each time you eat it than if you eat it with protein or fat. Now, fat slows down the ingestion of the carbs because it's more slowly digesting. I mean, if you did a blood sugar test with, say, a bowl of cereal with or without fat, it would be dramatically different. In most people, it might go to 140 with fat, and it might go to 180 without. The reason that lady's watermelon shot up because she had it by itself. Guarantee if she had even a bowl of Haagen-Dazs ice cream with it, it would have slowed down the ingestion of those carbohydrates. But the protein part, what is protein? Protein is what the body uses in the amino acids. What are amino acids? They're actually, if you take a protein, you break it down into its smallest components, it's made up of these amino acids. And there are a lot of amino acids, but most proteins, not vegetarian ones, but most of the more carnivore proteins and or protein drinks or eggs are a complete protein. That means it can build muscle. It can build body systems that need that protein to maintain itself. And the older I get, the more I really consume literature, the more I'm very understanding why we have to have this. When you lack protein, that means, to me, if you lack protein, it's less than 1/2 gram per pound of body weight. That means if I was eating less than about 85 grams of protein, two things are going to happen to me. One is I'm going to lose muscle mass far faster. Sarcopenia. We already are losing 1 to 2% past age 35. You don't see it till you're about 50-ish, but that is correlated this close to mortality. When you lose muscle mass, it is one of the most dramatic correlations between how long are we going to live, and it's correlated with being frail. So how many people are in nursing homes? How many people, not one person listening would ever say, I want to be frail. Well, if you don't want to be frail, you got to lift weights and you have to do protein. Those two things. You can't do one without the other. You need to eat protein. And we all of these documentaries that are coming out about the miracle of not eating meat is, again, marginally bought and paid for. Because when I delved into all of those, they are a religion in some cases. In some cases, they're not. They're just people who really think that that's the right path to follow. I just have to disagree. I can still like the person, but I have to disagree because when I see people, as many as I see over my 45-year career, I've watched people go from young to old, from middle age to death, and from sickness to health, and from health to death. So I've seen a lot where I connect the dots, and that people tell me everything. So they tell me everything from their sex life to their poop life to their eat life. And that's, if you ask me what I ate yesterday, I probably won't remember, but I would remember if you told me something that you did with your life 3 months ago, I'd probably remember that because for some reason I have that in my head. So that many decades of listening to connecting the dots has shown me we cannot be on low protein. We cannot be inactive. We need to have weight training because we can live a long time without weight training, but you become more frail and you don't have health span. You have lifespan, which is perfectly fine. Serious vegetarians have lifespan. Yes, they do. But do they have health span? Many of them don't, and some do. So as far as your question still is, why is protein so important with the connection to blood sugar? If all you ate was carbohydrates and fat, you're not going to be optimizing the system of which glucose turns into ATP through the system of producing energy. Because even if you produce energy, you have to either be in an anabolic state, build-up state, or a catabolic state, which means a tear-down state. Well, Father Time's pretty damn cruel to us, and it wants us to actually, it doesn't care about us once we're past reproductive age. Father Time actually put us on this planet for one reason, that's to have babies so we can keep the species going. It didn't put us on here to live to be 80 and have fun and play pickleball. It did it because my sperm needs to get in somebody's egg, and we need to have more of those. About 28, nature's kind of starting to kick us out, and by 40, it really has, even though we can still have babies, it just isn't set up to be optimal. So this protein thing, we need to keep building up instead of building down. And that is what keeps us from being frail. It keeps the muscles, it keeps the skin, it keeps the tendons and ligaments, it keeps the organs, and it maintains the blood sugar far better than if you're not doing it based on the anabolic effect. Fat doesn't have anabolic effect, only protein does, and there's nothing that can replace it. So getting protein with every meal is my goal. Every single meal, I will do protein of some sort. Now in the evening at 7 o'clock, I'll do whole milk yogurt with organic blueberries. There's probably 10 grams of protein. I don't have to have a lot, but I want to have something in that. And every now and then, I will take a day where I don't eat any protein, just every now and then, because again, the receptor sites, I think they need to be cleaned out. But 98% of the time, protein, and protein from clean sources. And in fact, protein powders are cleaner than most foods because now we have the level of proteins from great companies that produce non-GMO. We know they're not glyphosate ridden. We know there's no antibiotics. We know that the cows or whatever it came from are not fed hormones. It's hard to find food as clean as a protein powder. That's why I do 2 a day.
Okay, so much to unpack there. And I first want to touch into something that you just casually threw in there, but I want to explain why. If you're a listener and you're like, wait, what? The gal that your client with watermelon, you said it almost might be better if she had Haagen-Dazs with it. Some people might be listening and be like, what? The reason being is, and from what I'm assuming is the fat in the Haagen-Dazs is going to help balance it out. Whereas you're just having the watermelon, you're getting that glucose spike without anything stabilizing that blood sugar. Whereas the fat, even though it does have sugar in there, you're still having that added benefit of fat to balance it out. I'm guessing that's what you're referring to.
If I had to go to my grandson's birthday party and I don't crave carbs anymore just because I'm on the diet that kind of basically keeps that from happening. But if I wanted to get a piece of that birthday cake, I would never eat that cake unless I have some fat. I don't say healthy fat, but some fat. Well, there's not much fat at a birthday party except ice creams that I know about. So the cake itself may have some fat, but it doesn't. It doesn't have enough to balance the sugar on a cake. So I'm going to eat more fat. So I'm going to have that scoop of vanilla ice cream, unless it was a junk food ice cream. If I knew it had 14 ingredients with all the red dyes, I'm not going to do it. Chances are I'm not going to do any of it anyway. But if I want to be social, I would do the cake and I would do the ice cream. Guarantee you that the blood sugar would not go up. It would be probably 30 points less because you did fat with the carbohydrate.
Absolutely. And if you want to test it out, order yourself a CGM and you can figure it out. Second thing that you talked about, and I've been raw vegan. I was vegan for a number of years. I did keto, intermittent fasting, all these things. I've learned now that I'm not going to, and I say this now, but who knows what's going to happen. I don't want to put any diehard rules on myself that this is the truth. And, because we're finding out more research comes out. But to your point, because you said you believed a half a gram of protein per pound of body fat, I believe that was, and now things have changed. I think what I am learning as well is, what is your body showing? Are you waking up with energy? Is your mood stabilized? Are you lean? Right now, the healthiest I've ever been. And generally postpartum, and I was thriving in pregnancy. I mean, immediately day 2 after, I was ready to run a marathon. I was doing push-ups, and who knows if I'm supposed to be doing that. But what your body could tell you if you're doing it right. And so I think finding that sweet spot, if you believe this is the truth, do you feel great? Is your energy stable? Are you, no anxiety? What does your skin look like? What does your energy levels look like? I think that's something to press into. And lastly, what I've never occurred to me. I've always loved protein powder and protein bars. I don't know. I'm a weird one. I've enjoyed it. I was a meathead back in the day. I have a college record for bench press. I used to lift quite heavy. And I do protein powder on a regular basis. And what you said really stuck out to me, because I will say financially right now, I'm probably not purchasing the highest tier animal products, fish, beef, all that stuff. I'd love to get there. But the protein powder that I am purchasing is good quality. They do make sure. And so you did mention, I'm probably consuming a healthier, more bioavailable, less antibiotic rich source of protein for my protein powder than I am for my animal protein. I love
almost
that.
Bet you. Yes, almost bet you, because unless you raise your own food, unless you're intimately connected, which we can be if we have enough money and time, but that's very few of us. So yes, I feel so good in the mornings when I do my protein powder, and I know the purity of that. I am deep diving into something called oxalates, which is, I believe, caused my double hip replacement to happen. And it's because I'm such a health nut, because I ate too much spinach, I ate too much chocolate, I ate too much of these foods that have this crystalline, almost glass molecule that destroys wherever it lands. So I've changed my diet as far as the green stuff, but I have plenty every day. But I had to remove 10 different foods in order for my destruction of my body to not continue. The bladder irritation and the hip pain, both I think were caused by oxalates. So maybe that's for a podcast another day. I do say for blood sugar, again, to reach your optimal level, again, 84 fasting. And then you look at the foods. We hope to not get over 140 postprandial after eating a meal for an hour or two. But there are some herbs that can help to activate the activity and sensitivity of insulin, which then makes blood sugar go down. My number one, and I'm not saying this for any reason, when I see people, which I did yesterday and I do every day, LifeSeasons has the best formula that I see for results of anyone. I tell everybody to do one with breakfast, one lunch, and one supper of these pills. And they have multiple mechanisms of action based on the botanical green pharmacy that I truly, truly believe in. And we see results in 2 to 4 weeks when people do that as far as their diet. A few people want magic pills. Well, they can't keep eating the bad food and expect this to be miraculous. But you talked about how your feedback of your body should tell you. But I hate to say, if I'm talking to a 50-year-old truck driver, he doesn't have a freaking clue about his body. He doesn't know anything, because he thought of his body every day of his life like a Ford F-150 truck that he went out on that driveway and he turned the key and he drove. Every day, men do this. I had a whole podcast on police officers last week. I was talking to the police chief, and I said the same thing. I said, one of my brotherhoods is police officers because I was a police officer, but I know them all too well. They are the worst. Firemen are too. The worst for being, this is a truck, and I'm going to drive it till it breaks. And guess what? When it breaks, I'm going to take it to the shop, which is the doctor, and he's going to fix me, until there's an epiphany goes off and he realizes, hey, my health is based on my choices every day. And finally, some of them turn the corner and some of them don't. They have strokes and die.
Absolutely. And I have a lot of friends who are in those fields as well. And that very much is their mindset. Now, two things before we wrap up and I let you head out is, okay, so I, had a history with veganism. There are individuals, even though they know scientifically that animal-based diets are healthier for moral reasons, ethical reasons, environmental reasons, vegan sources, are we still getting the benefits? At least some of them, can we still achieve optimal well-being on a vegan diet? Obviously, it's going to be a lot more work, but is it possible?
Absolutely. And I respect people who have a moral dilemma with accessing animals for protein. No problem. I've been just like you. There's every diet that ever has been written I have done. I would not eat rice unless it was stirred counterclockwise due to my macrobiotic year, where I'd go teach cancer patients how to cook macrobiotically. All these things have a slice of value to them, so I really don't mind that I went through that whole history. But a vegan with the right good plant-based protein, I tend to prefer Truvani that we sell a lot of, because you have to really watch a little bit more with that. Actually, you do the others because of the lead content in some of the plant-based foods. And unless they're really testing for it, you might be getting some heavy metals and things that you don't want. And Truvani, all of them have it. All plant-based proteins have a little bit, but you want ones with littles, not lots. Yes, you can do it. You got to really focus on those healthy fats with every meal. You probably may have to do 3 protein drinks a day if you do that. But things, again, I go back to this oxalate thing. Tofu has a ton of oxalates. Did not know that until I became kind of well-versed on oxalates. I love tofu, and I really felt, okay, that could be a source for me, but it's not any longer because of the oxalate issue. But there are still...
tempeh?
Tempeh doesn't seem to have as many oxalates. And again, the rice and bean combination, it makes proper protein. It makes it because it combines the essential amino acids, but it's not an efficient protein. If we look at efficiency on a scale of 0 to 100, those beans and rices are about 60 to 65, maybe 70 on the best diet to make it turn into an anabolic compound that builds the body. Well, if you have anything in the digestive tract that's compromised, if you have lack of hydrochloric acid, you have other issues, not enough enzymes, you have irritable bowel, you have this and that, leaky gut. Well, you'll probably raise that 65% efficiency may go down to 40 because you're not breaking in, making it happen. Because when you do rice and bean type of combos, the body has to find the magical combination to plug these together like an electric outlet. When you do whey protein, you don't. Again, I'm not putting down the vegan path because you can do it. Yes, you can, but I really know it's more difficult, and you would have to probably rely on a little bit more of those protein drinks to know you have a complete protein instead of the guesswork of beans and rice protein.
Great. And maybe if you're listening and you're kind of teetering over and starting to get a little bit curious, maybe there's a way that we can bridge the gap where you're not eating actual animal-based foods as far as the meat, but maybe you're introducing some of those whey proteins into your meal. Again, that's, not for everyone, especially if you're, strong with your veganism. Again, I was vegan for a number of years, but maybe that will be a way to integrate some of those beneficial components, ingredients, micronutrients, macronutrients into your diet. Now, last thing, and kind of more of like a fun component, I'd love to have you walk us through a day in your life as far as foods, what you're eating, and really emphasize on the protein. I'd love for people, I talk to so many people, my sister-in-law, and she says that she has 2 eggs for breakfast and she's going through, and I'm like, I would just encourage you to up your protein amount. What is it? 7 grams of protein in an egg. I'm not quite positive, but we're not getting near the amount. And so many of my friends are doing that. She started including a protein shake an hour after breakfast. She goes, it's changed my life. That is, quote, what she told me. I've noticed already weight change. I've noticed she's just like, I'm not binging later on. People are not getting enough protein in the diet. It's a very, very minor, the beef heads, at the gym, and I've dated many of them. I know the protein that they're consuming, but most people are not consuming enough protein. I just love to hear, what does your plate look like on a regular day?
Before that, I want to say we can get too much protein, so don't think that 400 is good. So there is that sweet spot. And then secondly, if a vegan is willing to do dairy products, it is so easy. because kefir or kefir, that's a big source of protein for me, and it keeps me with more calories, which is what I need. It helps me with a healthy fat. Raw milk cheese would be ideal, but even cheese that was better produced. That makes life so easy if you can feel comfortable with that. And I will say on TikTok, and a lot of people are not on it, some are, I have 10 million views, and it's all me in the gym talking about how do we build muscle at any age. I don't really say that just because I'm 67 that I've got, this is only for 60-year-olds. No, it's just across the board. And so I keep pushing the protein thing on the TikTok. And it's at Nutrition World Chattanooga is the call name on TikTok if you want to look at it. I've been doing it 2 years and you have 10 million views. So a lot of people are interested. My days are very boring because I am a robot. I've learned one is I don't eat foods for enjoyment as my number one choice. It's my number 2 or 3. At breakfast and lunch, it's not even 2 or 3. It could be 4. I eat for those meals always what are the macros. Then secondly, how clean can I get it? Those are the only 2 rules I have. So every single morning I get up and I use my protein drink. I'm getting about 35 grams of protein. I will add a little bit of psyllium in it for my fiber. I'll add a little bit of electrolytes to make sure that I've covered the potassium, sodium. Huge fan of modest amounts of sodium. And then I will add MCT oil because I need a little bit more calories. And I use powdered so I don't have to worry about a loose stool. When I use powdered, it never bothers me. Sometimes the oil can bother me.
Powdered MCT? I don't think do you know what company?
Blue Bonnet makes a powder that's
perfect.
fully clean. And I use a scoop and a half of that. So that's my drink in water Monday through Saturday, every 6 days. That's exactly, unless I go out of town. If I do, I actually put it in packets and I will generally pour it in. So that's my breakfast. Sundays, I do eat my organic, which we sell here, the sausage or the bacon or the meats with the organic eggs and all that. That's my day that I'm just going to eat what I want. Breakfast Monday through Saturday. Then I will always take a piece of organic cheese. Again, keep in mind, I get up at 3:12 every day. I'm at the gym at 4:30. When I'm done working out at 7, I will have my protein drink about 3:30. I will have four spoons of sunflower butter. It's the only nut butter that does not have oxalates or has low levels. I have 4 spoons. I carry it in my gym bag. And then I'll have 1 slice of organic cheese in one of those little sleeves. I have to have that to make myself get to lunch. There's not enough calories when you work out as hard as I do.
Is that a raw cheese or just a normal?
No, I can't get raw cheese. I have to get the regular, just organic cheese.
Okay.
So again, I'm not hung up on the details. I want the macros first. So that gives me the macros. I need a little bit more calories from that sunflower butter. Then I need a little more protein. So that gives me probably 7 more grams of protein. 11 o'clock every day, my whole staff of 34 people know Ed's leaving for lunch at 15 to 11 every single day. I will always eat red meat if I have it. My daughter and I, we powwow together. We go eat lunch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like we did today. And we go down. Chicken's my last choice because there's so much bacteria in them that may be causing UTIs. They're concentrated animal feeding operations create so much antibiotics. But I will have it if I have to. Today was the day I had to have it. They didn't have my beef. They didn't have my roast. They didn't have my hamburger steak. They didn't have what I wanted. And I'll always get a big serving of that. And I'll always get their broccoli. They have a broccoli salad because I totally still will believe in broccoli and those cruciferous indole-3 carbinol vegetables to create less prostate cancer, get rid of some of these phytoestrogens and things. Then I'll get coleslaw. But every single day I take in something. Used to embarrass my daughter. She doesn't give a hoot about it now. A big ball of olive oil. Walk into the restaurant with it every single day. Because I'm going to have 3 tablespoons of oil somewhere on my lunch and my supper. Well, they're not going to have quality olive oil at any restaurant hardly. So I'll walk in, I'll pour it on my coleslaw as I did today. I pour it on my broccoli. So that gives me my calories I need. It gives me the fats I want. Again, to slow down the ingestion of carbohydrates, even though I don't eat many. In fact, I haven't hardly had any by lunch. So I'm a little bit in ketosis, which helps me burn body fat, makes me feel better. But now I want carbs, but I only want about 30 probably. So I need 30 for my dinner budget. So then at 1 o'clock, right before I talked to you, I had another 35 grams of protein with a little bit more MCT oil and creatine. Creatine is magical for even senior citizens, helping us with longevity. I'm talking to a guy on Parkinson's disease here in an hour. First thing I'll put him on is creatine because studies are very strong that it may help him with quality of life. Then 4:30 today, I will be going to somewhere to eat. and I'll either have salmon or I'll have a steak or I'll have some. I will not have chicken at supper unless it was just whacked in a corner, and I will have probably one vegetable only, and then I will take my olive oil. I'll pour it on there. Now I do love tequila, and I will have I'll have my drink of tequila. And I'm such a not neurotic, I'm just healthy about it. I printed a card that I give all the waitresses. This card if you make a tequila drink, it will not elevate insulin or blood sugar. You have to make it just like Ed Jones says to make it. What is that? 2 shots of tequila, shaken on the rocks with fresh squeezed lemon juice, add a small amount of water, then you pour everything after it's shaken into a glass with the ice. I have had people test their blood sugar with this recipe. Blood sugar hardly moves. It will go from 90 to 94 after 2 shots. You do that with beer, you do that with liquor, you do that with any other alcohol, you're going to go up to 120 to 130, but not with that drink.
Now, is that the way you're crafting the tequila, or does tequila, I'm not a drinker, but does tequila in general, will that spike it significantly, or is it specifically the way you're crafting it?
I think 70% is the fact that tequila has a low glycemic index from the agave plant. It doesn't have glyphosate. It's the healthiest. I did a YouTube podcast on the 10 alcohols. What are the 2 worst? Beer and wine. Those are the 2 worst. Due to glyphosate, due to this, due to histamines, nobody wants to listen. They still want to drink their freaking damn wine because it's socially accepted and they think it's healthy. It's not healthy. It has so little resveratrol. It's a joke, but yet everybody's pretending.
The cons do not outweigh the pros.
Not at all. And I quit drinking wine about 7 years ago, and I had 1 glass about 3 years ago at a contest where we won an award. I felt so bad. I knew it was a histamine release. So just stick with tequila, mix right. The lemon juice will slow down the insulin response. It has to be mixed within it and shaken really good. And so that is a magical drink. Then at 7 o'clock at night, I'll have my whole milk yogurt that's plain. And I want some more antioxidants. So I'll do the organic blueberries put in there with half and half cream poured on top that's organic. So that gives me almost enough protein, gives me the calories I need. And then I go to bed. Is that best? Probably not, but I have to get my macros in, and it does not affect my sleep at this stage.
Yep. Awesome. That was incredible. And it actually, I don't know, maybe because I'm like a voluminous eater, I eat a lot of plants, but I do eat protein, animal based. It sounds like a small amount of food, but highly caloric with really good nutrients. I mean, because you're having the fatty protein that's filling you up. You're having the sunflower, the MC2. I never heard about the sunflower, so I'll have to check that out. But Ed, this was such a fantastic conversation. I pulled away so many great nuggets. I think our listeners are going to enjoy this conversation. And it was just such a pleasure to connecting with you. And again, if you are listening and you are local in the Chattanooga area, you probably already know of Nutrition World, but definitely give it a check out. So thank you so much for being here, Ed.
Thank you, Nikki, so much.